They said the collider would end the world. They were wrong. It opened a door to an Earth where dinosaurs never died, where reptilian empires rule the sky, and humanity is judged as a dangerous evolutionary mistake. This is not time travel. This is multiverse science fiction, quantum physics gone rogue, and first contact with a civilization that sees us as insects. And once the rift opens, reality itself begins to bleed. The hum of the collider wasn't a sound anymore. It was a sensation, a vibration rattling the marrow of my bones. I stood at the precipice of the unknown, my hand hovering over the final sequence of the Chronos Aperture. They called me a madman at the Institute, a dreamer who spent too much time looking at the math of string theory and not enough time looking at budget reports. But Eris Thorne doesn't care about budgets when the fabric of reality is about to tear open. Beside me, Dr. Ilara Vance checked the telemetry on the Quantum Lance, our tether ship. Her face was illuminated by the cascading green data streams, her skepticism fighting a losing war against her curiosity. Eris, the tachyon levels are spiking. If the calculations are off by even a decimal, we don't just fail, we erase the eastern seaboard, Ilara warned, though her voice trembled with anticipation rather than fear. The math is perfect, Ilara. It's the universe that's messy, I replied, initiating the sequence. Engaging the exotic matter injection in 3, 2, 1. The world didn't explode. It folded. The space before us, confined within the magnetic rings of the laboratory, twisted into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors, colors that hurt the eyes because human retinas weren't evolved to see them. Then, silence. Absolute, heavy silence. The swirling chaos settled into a perfect, shimmering window. It wasn't a void. It was a view. Through the rift, I didn't see the magma-choked hellscape of a primitive Earth, nor the cold vacuum of space. I saw a skyline, but not of steel and glass. These structures pierced the violet sky like spiraling shards of obsidian and emerald, pulsing with a rhythmic bioluminescent light. They were organic, grown rather than built, stretching kilometers into the atmosphere. Flying vehicles, sleek and avian in design, wove through the towers with impossible grace, leaving trails of ionized gas. "My God," Ilara whispered, stepping closer to the field. That's Earth. But the constellations, the axial tilt, it's all slightly wrong." "It's the Earth where the Chicxulub impactor missed," I realized, the breath leaving my lungs. 66 million years of uninterrupted evolution. We wasted no time. We suited up, the atmospheric scrubbers on our exo-rigs hissing as we stepped through the barrier. The transition felt like walking through a curtain of cold water. Gravity was the same, the air breathable but richer in oxygen, intoxicatingly so. We stood on a landing platform of polished, iridescent chitin. Below us, the city sprawled, a techno-jungle where nature and machine were indistinguishable. And then they arrived, not in tanks or with guns, but descending from the sky on gravity-defying discs. They were tall, perhaps 7 feet, with posture that commanded instant respect. Their skin was a tapestry of fine, jewel-toned scales, turning into plumage along the crests of their heads. Their eyes were large, reptilian, and burning with an intelligence that made me feel instantly small. They wore robes that flowed like liquid mercury. One of them, wearing a mantle of deep crimson feathers, stepped forward. It didn't speak with a roar, but with a synthesized voice projected directly from a collar device around its neck. The translation was instantaneous, fed into our comms. "I am High Counselor Kairos of the Vilosian Ascendancy. You have breached the membrane of causality. Explain your intrusion, mammal." The term mammal was spoken with a mix of pity and distaste, like one might address a pest that had learned to perform a card trick. We were taken into custody, though custody implies cells and bars. The Vilosians, descendants, I surmised, of the Troodontids, the smartest of the dinosaurs, didn't believe in incarceration. They believed in correctional enlightenment. We were transported to the central spire aboard a transport craft called the Aether Wing. The interior was warm, humid, and smelled of ozone and wet earth. There were no windows, only holographic projections of the exterior that made the hull appear transparent. As we flew, Chronos watched us, his golden eyes unblinking. "We have watched your timeline for distinct cycles," Chronos said, his claws tapping rhythmically on a datapad made of floating light. "A violent, chaotic branch of probability. You burn your dead ancestors for fuel. You split the atom for war before energy. You are inefficient." "We survived," Ilara countered, her voice steady despite the overwhelming alien presence. "We adapted, just like you." Chronos tilted his head, a movement so bird-like it was unnerving. "Adaptation implies reaction to trauma. We did not merely adapt, Dr. Vance. We ascended. When the Great Stone bypassed our world, we focused not on survival, but on harmony. Our technology is not forged, it is hatched. Our energy is not dug, it is harvested from the songs of stars." We arrived at the High Clutch, the governing seat of their global empire. The architecture was breathtaking, massive rib cages of white stone filled with stained glass that depicted the history of their species. We walked through halls where holograms of massive sauropods grazed on nebulae. It was a civilization that had turned the ferocity of the predator into the discipline of the philosopher. In the council chamber, a vast amphitheater filled with hundreds of Vilosians, we were put on trial, not for a crime, but for our existence. The question on the floor, was humanity a threat to the multiverse? The debate was heated. Some, like a militant faction led by a scarred Vilosian named Commander Varric, argued that our opening of the rift was an act of aggression. Varric, a massive specimen clearly descended from dromaeosaurid lineage, paced the floor, his tail swishing aggressively. "They are a contagion," Varric hissed, the translator struggling to convey the guttural depth of his voice. "They consume until collapse. Look at their atmospheric readings. They have choked their own mother world. Now they punch holes in reality to find a fresh carcass. We must seal the breach and sterilize the origin point." "Sterilize?" I stepped forward, ignoring Ilara's warning hand on my arm. "We are explorers. We came to learn. You speak of ascension, of harmony, yet you propose genocide because you don't like our history? That sounds like fear, not enlightenment." A hush fell over the chamber. To challenge a high counselor was unheard of. Chronos looked at me, not with anger, but with a new expression, curiosity. "Fear is a mammalian instinct," Chronos said softly. "We do not fear. We calculate risk. However, the human thorn makes a valid point. If we are truly superior, we should not destroy the inferior, but guide it, or perhaps study it." The council voted. By a narrow margin, Varric's motion to destroy the Chronos Aperture and us along with it was denied. Instead, we were granted a temporary stay. We were to be guests, but also specimens. We were given access to their archives, their science, under strict supervision. What we found in the following days was staggering. They had mastered zero-point energy eons ago. They had terraformed Mars and Venus into lush garden worlds. They had a fleet, the Solarian Armada, capable of faster-than-light travel without entering hyperspace, simply by folding space around the hull. But beneath the utopia, there was a darkness. I discovered it in the archive of lineages, a hidden file, encrypted in a way that suggested shame. The Vilosians hadn't just evolved. they had pruned. Millions of years ago, as they gained sentience, they systematically wiped out the other dinosaur species that showed potential intelligence but lacked their specific genetic markers for empathy. They had murdered their cousins to ensure a unified planetary consciousness. Their paradise was built on a prehistoric fratricide. I confronted Chronos in his private sanctum, a floating garden suspended high above the city clouds. He didn't deny it. "Peace requires singular vision," Chronos admitted, looking out at the binary moons, one natural, one a massive space station. "We did what was necessary to prevent the tribalism that plagues your species. You kill each other over flags and gods. We removed the variables that would lead to such chaos." "You traded diversity for order," I said, feeling a chill. "It's not harmony, it's control." "And yet, who breathes cleaner air?" Chronos countered. "Who spans the stars?" Our philosophical debate was cut short by a siren. It wasn't an air raid siren, it was a psychic pulse, felt in the teeth. The Chronos Aperture, the rift we had left open, was destabilizing. Ilara radioed me, panic in her voice. "Eris, the bridge is acting as a siphon. The entropy from our universe is leaking into theirs. Our reality is trying to balance the equation. We're draining them." The sky above the city began to bruise. Violet turned to a sickly gray. The biotowers began to wilt, their lights flickering. The connection between two universes with vastly different entropic states was causing a thermodynamic shear. Commander Varric stormed into the sanctum flanked by guards. "The mammals have doomed us. I told you. The link must be severed from their side. We must send a warhead through and detonate the facility." "No!" I shouted. "If you detonate it, the backlash will shatter the dimensional wall. Both Earths will be consumed by a vacuum decay bubble. We have to close it manually, from the center." The journey back to the rift was a nightmare. The city was in chaos. The laws of physics were breaking down. Gravity pockets failed, sending vehicles crashing into towers. Time was looping. I saw the same building collapse 3 times in a row. Chronos, Varric, Ilara, and I boarded the Aether Wing. We had to navigate the collapsing reality to reach the rift point. Varric piloted with savage intensity, dodging falling debris and tears in the spatial fabric that looked like jagged black lightning. "The core of your machine," Chronos shouted over the screaming engines. "It requires a consciousness to collapse the wave function. Someone must be inside the stream to guide the closure." He was right. The Chronos Aperture wasn't just mechanical, it was quantum entangled with the observer. To shut it down without an explosion, someone had to manually decouple the timelines from within the event horizon. "I'll do it," I said. "You will die," Varric grunted, eyeing me with begrudging respect. "If I don't, everyone dies, on both worlds," I replied. We reached the platform. The rift was a swirling vortex of violent red and black now. The wind was howling, pulling everything towards the other side. I looked at Ilara. There were no words needed. She handed me the decryption key for the machine's core. "Go," she said, tears streaming down her face. I stepped onto the platform, the gravity shearing at my suit. But I wasn't alone. Chronos stepped up beside me. "You cannot stabilize the Velocian matrix alone," Chronos said. "Our tech is bio-tuned. You need a guide." "You're the High Counselor," I yelled over the roar. "You can't sacrifice yourself." "I am a leader," Chronos corrected. "This is what leaders do. Besides," he added, a strange bird-like trill entering his voice. A laugh? "I wish to see what lies beyond the veil." Together, human and saurian, mammal and reptile, we walked into the blinding light of the unstable bridge. The pain was excruciating, a tearing of the soul. But Chronos held his ground, his mind linking with the machine's interface through his collar. I felt his thoughts, ancient, geometric, cold but deeply caring. He felt mine, chaotic, passionate, fearful. For a moment, in that white void, our species were one. We wove the threads of reality back together.
I saw the timeline of the dinosaurs, a beautiful, bloody ribbon of time. I saw the timeline of humanity, a jagged, desperate climb from the mud. With a final push of will, we severed the link. I woke up on the cold concrete floor of the lab. The silence was deafening. The machine was dark, smoking. Ilara was shaking me, screaming my name. Eris! Eris, you're alive! I sat up, coughing. The rift was gone. The sensors showed normal background radiation. It was over. Did we save them? I rasped. Ilara nodded, helping me up. The readings stabilized instantly. The connection is severed. I looked down at my hand. Clutched in my palm was something that shouldn't exist. A single iridescent feather, shimmering with a light that didn't belong to our sun. Kairos didn't make it back. Or maybe he made it to somewhere else. The world outside the lab was the same. Traffic, pollution, noise. But as I looked at that feather, I knew we weren't alone. We were just the younger siblings, playing in the mud, while the elders watched from the stars, waiting for us to grow up. And now I had work to do. We had to be better. We had to be ready. Because next time, they might not be so forgiving. If this alternate Earth made you think, imagine what's next. Like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more cinematic science fiction.